Lovely to be with you.
Now, can you tell us what is the current status of the coup in Myanmar and your personal take on the situation?
Well, the current status is that protesters continue to take to the streets in considerable numbers. The numbers haven't dropped away over the last number of weeks. But the challenge that the protesters have is that the military is responding to them with brutal violence. We're seeing daily images of protesters, peaceful protesters, being shot at with live rounds by Myanmar's military. There's been some distressing images of protesters and bystanders being brutally beaten by the military. Journalists have been targeted, photographers, anyone who really might be documenting the military's crimes has been a target, as have medical staff. So there's been images too that have emerged from Myanmar of soldiers stopping ambulances and badly beating ambulance staff. And of course, a number of hospitals have been targeted too. It's a fraught situation. It's not improving. The military are showing no signs of using any other strategy than violence and fear. But the protesters are brave. They see that they're fighting for the future of their country, and they're not likely to give up soon.
Right. Now, many countries, including the United States and Britain, have already implemented or plan to implement various sanctions to freeze the military's assets that we just heard. What impact and repercussions of these efforts will bring to Myanmar?
Well, I think that can be a very useful strategy. Sanctions that target the military and military-connected companies really will hit the military where it hurts. I mean, Myanmar's military isn't, as you might understand, a military in another country. This is really like an organized crime gang that's used violence to take over the country. Their objectives are both political but also economic. So a standard approach for a general in Myanmar, that once they become a general, that's their opportunity to become rich, and for their families to become rich, and various cronies and hangers-on to become rich. And that's why sanctions targeted at military companies can be so useful, because it hits the military where it hurts them.
Right. Now, if Myanmar becomes isolated diplomatically, is there a chance that the military will back down?
Well, I think there's always a chance the military will back down. Now, Min Aung Hlaing, the coup leader, won't back down. He's 100% committed to this. What may well happen is that his deputies or other senior figures in the military may begin to reassess once they're hurt economically, and once they realise that they're isolated politically and that the protests are not going to stop. They may start to very quickly reassess whether backing Min Aung Hlaing's coup was a wise move. And I think that's something that could happen it could happen very quickly and with very little notice that could occur. But what that needs is for the pressure diplomatically to continue, and for the economic pressure to continue on the military. And that needs strong international commitment.
I see. Now, in terms of what you just said, do you think that the rest of the world then, of course, should increase the pressure on Myanmar with tougher sanctions, which will then bring the crisis to an end? Or do you think there should be a more measured approach in this particular issue?
I know now is not the time for holding back. The international community needs to urgently and strongly act. They need to impose strong economic censure on military companies and military businesses. There needs to be a global arms embargo. I mean, it's ludicrous that Myanmar's military that's using its bullets to murder civilians and peaceful protesters could continue to buy weapons. So there needs to be a global arms embargo. And there probably now needs to urgently be a referral from the UN Security Council to the International Criminal Court. Myanmar's soldiers need to know that there will be repercussions internationally and judicially for murdering peaceful protesters. That's not something that any country's military should be allowed to get away with. And there needs to be a referral to the International Criminal Court.
I see. Well, Dr. Lee, that's all the time we have. Thank you for joining us and sharing your thoughts on this issue.
Great to be with you.
Ambassador Lee, we just heard Dr. Lee's assessment of the situation as well as his proposals for how this could be resolved. He mentioned an arms embargo. He also talked about targeted sanctions, which you mentioned earlier, as well as referring a case to the ICC and holding the soldiers responsible for these crimes that they've committed. Do you agree with his assessment as well as his proposals?
Well, I think that there is actually two aspects. First, if we put actually much more, the pressure on the military sanctions, especially actually we target actually their, the foreign assets, their assets actually, they're slashed into other foreign banks or something like that. It will be very much actually effective. But referring actually the military leader to the ICC, already some of them have been already referred to ICC because actually, the 2017 they actually massacred, the Rohingya people. So because of that, they have been already referred. But because of that, actually, military leaders, they might be afraid. They might get a very severe actually sentence for that kind of actually their murder, mass murder. So that's why actually, they don't want to lose control of the actual powers. So it could be actually counter-effective too.
I see. Well, you just said that they are likely to let go of power, but they've stated publicly that they're going to hold general elections in a year. Given what you just said, do you think that's likely to happen, or will they continue this process of holding on to power as long as they can?
Well, my sense tell me that actually it's pretty hard for them actually to have to hold actually general elections again actually in 1 year later. Probably actually they feel also a lot of pressure from the civilian side. And then their civilian side the protest is so severe, and then they will go on a general strike. If the actual people go on a general strike, then probably it will collapse the whole the Myanmar systems, and then the government cannot work without the help and the support of the people. So probably they will, think about some the much more actually, the compromise, the measures. So I think actually, the international community as well as some of the inside of Myanmar and some other groups, power groups, they can play some mediating roles between the civilian power and the military power. So, for example, actually, in Myanmar, the Buddhist group, they are very actually, strong and very well united, and then they are very much influential. So even the Min Aung Hlaing, the commander-in-chief, the figure in question, he also have to, respect actually, the Buddhist monk. When he meet a Buddhist monk, he have to kneel down. He cannot even actually sit in front of the Buddhist monk, because Buddhist monk is very well respected in Myanmar. 2007, at the time, the Buddhist monk, they have led the demonstration. They stood in the front line of the protest, but this time actually they didn't say anything about the military coup d'etat. So that's why actually they can play some kind of mediating role, right? So that is domestic peaceful solutions, and then there could be another, the external, peaceful solution, which can be taken, undertaken by the international community. So United Nations and the United States and the United Kingdom, which has ruled Myanmar, the Burma at the time, for 120 years. They have actually quite good influence and the network in the Myanmar. So if they, three entities, they designate this a special envoy, and then they send them together actually to Myanmar, and then try to play some of the mediating role and bridge the gap between two powers. I think it is possible with some smart sanctions in their hands.
I see. So from within the country, there's the possibility of Buddhist monks playing a mediating role, but also from without the United States, as UK, as you mentioned, the United Nations as well. I see. Well, unfortunately, we are out of time. Ambassador Lee, thank you for coming in and sharing your